Outrage in the headlines once more, with Rachel Reeves slammed as extra benefits dished out to second wives in polygamous marriages. And it's not just second wives either. It's third wives, fourth wives, fifth wives, sixth wives. You get the gist. There is no limit. But another day, another example of some somewhat selective outrage in the headlines, because this is not a new thing. And it's not really Rachel Reeves' fault either, although the numbers are going up and they are going to be paying more to the second, third, fourth, fifth wives, and there is still no limit. But as I say, it's not quite Rachel Reeves' fault, and it's not quite a new thing. In fact, this has been going on since 1975. So welcome to the channel. If you are new to me, I am Daniel Smith, the Barrister of England and Wales. Please do subscribe to the channel for a brutally honest analysis of what goes on in the headlines, the news, the politics, and hopefully a frank explanation of the law. So please do subscribe. I am almost on the way to 1 million subscribers. So you see these headlines, and it is obviously designed to grab attention. It is somewhat tabloid in nature, but that doesn't make it wrong. Now, you get a lot of people saying, you're reading this in the, quote, XYZ newspaper. Surely that's not true. And they label it as a tabloid or right-wing or whatever they label it as, and they say, surely you're not relying on that as your news source. But it is true, at least, because I can show you the law for this, because this has been brought about in 1975 in the Social Security and Family Allowances Polygamous Marriages Regulations of 1975. And this was under you guessed it, a Labour government. Now, aside from the fact that it is an offence under English law, and has been for a very long time, to be party to a polygamous marriage, if I move this you can probably see it a little bit better, under the Offences Against the Person Act of 1861, Section 57, you can actually go to prison for a very long time if you are found to be involved in a second marriage. This, law students will recall, refers to some sort of obscurity that once was in law, where they made it an offence to become party to a second marriage, but then they made it that any marriage ceremony was null, i.e. just wasn't valid if you were already married, thus the offence could never be committed. So then they tweaked it and changed it so that going through the marriage ceremony and everything else that makes it a marriage, going through that is the offence, and therefore going through that whole thing of being party to a second marriage becomes an offence. So why then do we allow polygamous marriages, and why, moreover, are DWP paying out benefits to those who have a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth wife? Now, this is actually relatively straightforward, and to be fair to the article that I quoted, whilst it does have a headline designed to grab your attention, that's what my thumbnails do, it does explain in the article how this works. Now, in simple terms, for someone who is party to a polygamous marriage and of pensionable age, they are entitled to a weekly amount, currently of £119.50. And according to the document that I found, this is going up to £121.60 for 25 to 26, and then up again to £127.35. And this is indeed available to each additional spouse who is a member of the same household. Now, what might not be clear from the headline is that in order to qualify for this, not only are they to be of pensionable age, but also they must be domiciled, i.e. they are living in another country, not in the UK, when that marriage takes place. And it must be a valid marriage in that country. So even if they are the second or third or fourth wife or whatever, and they are, as long as they're married in another country and it is legal there, and then they come here, then they are entitled to claim this spousal benefit. It still leaves open the question as to why do we allow that when our own laws don't allow someone to be married more than once. That is simply a matter of international private law. It is something that was brought about in 1975 and has sort of stuck around since. That is not to say that it has gone without question. The Conservatives clearly raise this question again and again, and against each Labour government, when they arise, this question is then put again to the Labour government. Much like it is put here to Rachel Reeves, it was put in 2008 under the Gordon Brown government again, just putting that question, why are we still supporting this when we don't allow polygamous marriages under English law? That is a question I cannot answer. That is one of government policy, and that is why government policy and law overlap so much. but I did think it was useful to explain this to you so that you're not just left with the headline. There is some explanation underneath it. But as I say, all of this does give rise to the potential for some absurdity, because there is also a huge amount of work going on at DWP to combat benefit fraud and reclaiming payments fraudulently claimed, or potentially not even of pensionable age. I don't know. I just know that there is all sorts of fraud that goes on, and DWP makes a lot of effort in recovering that money once it's been paid out. Now, one might suggest that the laws could be changed to streamline them and simplify them so that it is not trying to chase down all of these avenues where it has the potential for fraud, but again, that's a matter of policy, and that is not down to me. Now, with Christmas rapidly approaching, you might be doing some extra shopping, and I can help you to find better prices for those things. Because believe it or not, some retailers will change the prices of their products and services depending on where you live. How do they know? Well, you connect to the internet and that tells them roughly where you are. This is called targeted pricing, but I can help you to avoid that, or at least find the best price available, if you use a partner to my channel, which is NordVPN, because they give you an anonymous IP address where you can virtually change your location and see whether the price changes. A little bit sneaky on the retailer's part, but they're perfectly allowed to do that, and that is certainly something they do. But also at Christmas time, you might be traveling, so you might be connecting to unsecure networks. NordVPN will protect you for that as well. You might be receiving lots of messages and lots of emails with deliveries and updates, and you might be tempted to click links in those emails as well. And don't think that you might not be fooled, because some of them are very convincing, but NordVPN will check for malicious websites, malicious downloads, and it will protect you from those as well. The way NordVPN works is it will take the communication and data from your devices, any of your devices, through an encrypted virtual private network tunnel through their VPN servers, ultimately to the destination website. Thus, it makes this data and traffic encrypted or invisible to your internet service providers, hackers, other companies, agencies, employers, and anyone else that wants to snoop on your data. And as they're a partner to my channel, you can get an additional 4 months free using my code BBB, linked in the description below. Just head over to nordvpn.com/BBB and you'll get 4 months free on top of any deal that they are running. It is less than the price of a cup of coffee every month to know that you've got that peace of mind of being secure on the internet and getting the best deals for Christmas. So check out NordVPN with 4 months free with my code BBB, linked in the description below. But in other news, more updates on policies from organizations banning biological males from girls' or women's spaces, including Girl Guiding and the Women's Institute. Let's take a look at those in turn. This, to be perfectly frank, is a little bit of a garbled article from the BBC here. It says, trans girls can no longer join Girl Guiding. Now, a trans girl is obviously a biological boy, and the Supreme Court has made absolutely crystal clear that any organization that splits a service into sexes, men, women, girls, boys, it is to be done so on biology. Meaning, if the Girl Guiding, as it did, I did do a video on this, if it allowed biological boys to be part of the Girl Guiding, that would be in breach of the Supreme Court ruling on the Equality Act, and thus it would be a breach of the Equality Act. BBC reports the organisation that oversees Girl Guide groups in the UK has announced that it's banning trans girls from joining, in other words, biological boys. It goes on to say Girl Guiding has said the move, which means it will not accept biological boys who identify as girls, was in response to the Supreme Court ruling earlier this year, and it's taken this long for them to do so. That meant biological sex in equality law. The trustees said that they've made the difficult decision with a heavy heart, and there would be further announcements on what this will mean for current members. But I have to say here, there's no balancing. I know the BBC is just reporting here, but there's no balancing act there. If it is a difficult decision with a heavy heart, it is to protect the safety and the dignity of the girls who take part in Girl Guiding, and indeed the women that run it. And banning biological males from it shouldn't be a difficult decision, and it shouldn't be with a heavy heart. It should be a straightforward decision. It will negatively affect some people, that I understand, and that's obviously why they say it, but it should really be for the greater good here. Trans rights organisation Transactual said there is no problem being solved here, only harm being done. And with great respect, that's absolute nonsense, because it is absolutely protecting girls and indeed women who are involved with Girl Guiding. They say around 385,000 girls and young women between the ages of 4 and 18 take part in Rainbows, Brownies, Guides and Rangers across the UK. They say from today, trans girls and young women and others not recorded female at birth will no longer be able to join Girl Guiding as new members. But then went on to say that there'll be no immediate changes for young members and more information released next week. Similar story about the Women's Institute. No longer accept trans women as members from April. Now, of course, translating that, the Women's Institute will no longer accept biological males as members from April. I don't know why from April next year, when the law applies now, because the Supreme Court made it absolutely clear what the Equality Act said and has said since 2010, and it has not changed the law, it's just clarified what the law always was. So if they today allow a biological male in the Women's Institute, in my view, they are breaking the law. Not to be taken as legal advice, but it is my view. Melissa Green, the chief executive here of the National Federation of Women's Institutes, said that they have no choice and that it was with the utmost regret and sadness that they are banning trans women from the membership. Now, again, I feel the need to speak out here and express my protected right and philosophical belief that biological men cannot become women, and that Women's Institute and women's organizations and women's spaces, etc., should be protected for women and girls, and that men and boys should not be allowed into those. Now, this happens everywhere, whether it's a restaurant, a company, an organization, a bathroom, a changing room, a gym, or whatever. If you are a woman or a girl and you use those spaces that are designated on the basis of sex, you should not have to expect or look for, worry about a biological male entering those spaces. This is not to say anyone doing so is necessarily going in with malicious or nefarious intent, but that shouldn't be something that you have to think about. Melissa Green went on, incredibly sadly, we will have to restrict our membership on the basis of biological sex from April next year. Now, again, in my view, that should apply immediately and should have done all along, but at the very least, as soon as the Supreme Court judgment was released, because that clarified the law as it has always been. And for the avoidance of doubt, the Supreme Court made it clear that it is not eroding trans rights of any sort. If someone said you are not welcome here because you are trans, then that will be discrimination on the basis of gender reassignment. It doesn't mean, however, that you're entitled as a trans woman to go into women's spaces because you remain biologically male. And then this went on, but the message really want to get across is that it remains our firm belief that transgender women are women and that doesn't change. And with great respect, I think that's absurd because I think it erodes what it really means to be a woman. And I know I'm a man saying this, so some people will say men shouldn't explain this. I don't care. I have my views. I can express my views. That is what I think. It is a protected philosophical belief, and I can express my protected right to express it. And I believe that women and girls and all that it means to be female should be protected and not eroded by allowing biological males into it. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. But I think this is just a little bit strange that we have the chief executive of the Women's Institute saying that it is incredibly sad that they have to restrict membership to biological females and ban men from that institute. I think that is just a bit bizarre, but that's just my view. I respect yours if you have a different view. We won't fall out over it, but let me know your thoughts and comments in the box below. And as always, thank you for watching.